Hello everyone, welcome. This is the session on redesigning retirement. My name's Yvonne Sonsino from Mercer, and if you don't know Mercer, we're a global HR consulting firm which specialises in the design of health, wealth and careers programmes. First of all, just let me say a big thank you to Terry and Angela for their fast pivot to the virtual nature of this session. And I hope you're all enjoying the conference. We're a sponsor of this topic and a very avid campaigner for work in this area. A little bit about me. I'm the global co-leader of what Mercer calls our Next Stage initiative. The Next Stage initiative explores the work-related implications of longevity, which means we're working on a range of innovative new solutions in these areas. I'm also the former co-chair of the UK Government Fuller Working Lives Group. We worked with around 50 large employers over the last few years and published a policy report. And with those employers, we were unpacking the challenges of longevity in later life working. I also authored The New Rules of Living Longer, a book which outlines a set of 11 new rules to help you survive your longer life. And we'll look at a few of them today. To kick off, rule number 1, living longer equals working longer. And rule number 2, the nature of that work itself is changing. Technology and demographic change equals life as we don't know it yet. And it's so with that backdrop, I'm really very keen on exploring what we mean by examining redesigning retirement in that context. Mercer's also working very closely in partnership with the World Economic Forum on this topic. In January this year, we worked with them at the Davos session covering this. We looked more broadly then at redesigning later life. And now we're in the process of running a series of regional workshops with the forum. We ran a session for Europe last month at the end of April. We're running a session for Asia during this week, concurrent with the conference. And then in early June, we're running a session which covers the Americas. And I want to share some of those findings, really, really interesting meetings. I want to share some of the findings of those meetings with you today and some of our broader work. Just to set the longevity context, we live 10 years longer than our parents' generation, and we're living 20 years longer than our grandparents' generation. Children born today are much more likely to live to 100 than ever before. And generational conversations, this has been interesting for me. Generational conversations and conflict, to a certain extent, seem to be commonplace. But in just a decade from now, in 2030, the millennial generation, get a lot of popular press coverage, will be aged over 50. And therefore, these so-called generational or age-related traits are actually a moving target. Ageism and discrimination are still rife in our experience in the employment context and destructive. And why would you vote against yourself, for example? Why would you vote against your future aged self? We're all getting older, and if we're lucky, we'll all live to be old. We're all aging at exactly the same rate. And I advocate for multi-generational solutions that are inclusive and enable all generations to thrive. One key objective I shall be looking at today for redesigning retirement is securing financial resilience for that 100-year life, making longer life actually worth living. And for all the uncertainties of the coronavirus's legacy, one thing is for sure. We all have work to do to become more financially resilient. Prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, governments, businesses and individuals were already turning their attention to a precarious post-retirement future. For many people, their savings will expire long before they do. On average, individuals will outlive their money by between 8 and 20 years. This is in a study with the World Economic Forum from last year. The study is called Investing in and for Our Future, And in my view, it's very well named. And you can look up that research in there and see which countries are affected by between this 8 and 20-year gap in savings. And just turning back to the new rules of living longer, rule number 7, it's women that are at the sharp end of this scale. So the biggest gap in outliving savings will be experienced by women. Women's pensions on average are around 40% less than that of men's, and they live longer. And arguably, redesigning retirement for women is an even bigger challenge. It may even involve redesigning the structure of the family unit itself and the tasks the family unit undertake. It's mostly women, for example, that take up caring duties after all. How societies and individuals are currently preparing for retirement were just not designed with this demographic reality in mind. And faced with this scenario, outliving your money by such a significant margin, employees, understandably, are desperately in need of help with financial well-being. Employees' #1 financial worry is saving enough for retirement. Regardless of their age cohort, 68% of employees say they want financial wellness advice and assessments, and 61% say it's important to know they're on track to have enough funds in retirement. This data is recently published, and it comes through Mercer's Global Talent Trends study, a very big global study with thousands of participants in, multi-countries represented, and we'll provide the link to that study for you. Yet organisations have been very slow to catch on to that need for financial wellness, with only 23% of companies who responded currently providing any type of financial education for their employees. And if securing financial wellness was important before the pandemic, it's a burning platform today. The economic impact of COVID-19 has knocked retirement planning sideways, exacerbating pre-existing stress on an already shocked system. Investment markets are recoiling, interest rates remain at rock bottom levels, and corporations pull back on the dividend payments upon which pensions rely. As we saw during the 2008 financial crisis, some organisations have paused their matching of pension contributions. So employees pay into their pension plan and employers pay a matching contribution up to the same level. But some employers have now paused that matching process, trying to preserve cash, trying to preserve jobs. But we know from the financial crisis, when that happened before, these individuals' finances never fully recovered subsequently. Extra freedoms have been allowed in some parts of the world to draw from pension pots early. But this is the equivalent, in my opinion, of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Inequalities between the rich and the poor will widen even further as COVID-19 rampantly impacts deprived areas up to twice as hard as non-deprived. With this backdrop, and assuming that economies can recover and provide jobs, it is likely, therefore, that even more people will delay retirement. Pre-COVID-19, 72% of baby boomers said they intended to work past retirement age. It's far too soon to know the impact of COVID-19 on longevity trends, but what we do know is that life expectancy has historically been increasing at a rapid rate. With longer life expectancies, nearly 1 in 3 women said that financial need was their primary driver to keep working. 1 in 5 men said the same. And so the pressure on companies will continue to mount. In fact, in the Global Talent Trends data, 7 in 10 C-suite respondents are already worried about the cost of financial overheads like health and retirement contributions for employees who do stay on in work longer. And without action to strengthen financial wellness and financial resilience, employees will be left chasing a rainbow of retirement. They may never actually get there. And organisations risk paying for longevity. And so what I want to look at now in this session is considering the question of our health and our career as part of the financial wellness process. Companies' attitudes towards financial wellness will need to mirror the mindset shift we've seen in health and well-being in recent past. In health, for example, the focus has changed in the last decade from treating illnesses once they've happened to more preventative actions. Similarly, how to safeguard financial wellness over the course of a longer life is now the order of the day. More preventative actions. Financial resilience is an imperative for all generations, not just for those nearing retirement. And the longer you've got to make that preventative action now, the better your outcomes are likely to be. It's not okay to leave it too late. And this will require taking, in our view, a more all-encompassing view of a person's assets, looking at all of their tangible assets together, not just their savings, but assets such as property, assets from pension, assets from social security pension sources, but also looking at their less tangible assets such as their health and their skills and their career readiness to work for longer or to run a business alongside a job, or even maintain 3 or 4 flexible part-time jobs or contract jobs. Key to this holistic view will be a personalised long-term life plan. And rule number 6 from the new rules of living longer is that building a later life strategy will become the norm. And it's against this type of long-term life plan that's personalised. It's against that which companies can help individuals assess whether they're on the right trajectory to meet their later life goals and how to close the gaps if they're not. Indeed, 71% of employees in our research say that they want a midlife checkup for health, wealth and career, looking at all 3 in combination. If you're not healthy, you can't work. If you're not skilled, you can't work. If you can't work, you can't earn money and save and provide in pension pots. In the workshops we're running with the World Economic Forum this year, we've used a design thinking approach to develop exactly this type of holistic long-term life plan. We worked in small expert groups, and they were from the fields of medicine, from finance, from HR, and from technology on a series of real-life personas. We mapped out with these expert groups the top 3 priority interventions that would enable each of our persona to achieve the best later life outcome. We took into account the personal circumstances of each persona, which included their life expectancy, both the average and their 1 in 4 chance of living to an older age. And in all cases, that is several years longer, many years longer in some cases. We took into account their aspirations for later life, what they want to do. We took into account the persona's current health status, their current skill status, their potential for career changes, as well as examining their finances, both from private and social security sources. And solutions developed by these experts were multiple. A huge variety of different solutions were prepared. And we've put together a document which covers all of this background work for you to share, and I'll include the link with the materials here. But just looking briefly at some of these new ideas: designing new ways to work and earn, unlocking creative additional sources of income, investing in your own skills to raise your own career potential, and more accessible health support. And I want to explore these with you in a little more detail. In our opinion, redesigning work is crucial. It will be crucial to help employees turn their life plans into reality. There'll be innovations in the way we achieve this vision, and some early ideas we see already happening include the following. And firstly, I want to look at the design of flexible working arrangements. New employment models are emerging, such as phased retirement programs, structured phased retirement programs, creating a glide path, moving from full-time work to full-time retirement over a period of time. So a huge amount of good sense behind these. We're also seeing the emergence of what we're calling the contractor plus model, and I'll come back to that. Job shares, re-employment, portfolio careers, multi-employer consortium, pools of talent across multi-employers. All of these, in our experience, will be essential to redesigning work for the 100-year life. Mercer is even currently working on the design of what we're calling temporary talent sharing, a way for a company with a surplus of or furloughed workers at the moment, and how they can share them with another employer that's desperately looking for more workers during the COVID crisis. We're also seeing organisations experiment with different work patterns already for older workers. And specifically, these new work arrangements allow experienced workers to undertake project-based contracts with added social protection. Hence this new term that we're using, contractor plus. So you come off your existing full-time employment contract and you move on to a contractor plus contract with the same employer. And the plus element of it includes employee benefits like basic pension contributions, auto-enrolment in the UK, for example, some basic life and possibly cash health benefits and insurances, and access to training via an education budget, which the employee can use to decide and spend on what skills they want to enhance. None of these types of social protection are usually provided on a standard contractor deal. And this new innovative employment model, which turns many models on their head, combined with allowing workers to even draw some of their pension early, makes for a very novel approach to an engaged and rewarding later life glide path into retirement with more financial resilience. People stay skilled, they stay healthy, they stay in the market, they give themselves the opportunity to continue to earn. And there's a real added advantage for employers too by doing this. The fact is that better management of experienced workers is part of creating shared value and brings business benefits too. Mercer's Next Stage Research report, a big white paper that we published at the end of last year, and again, I'll share that link with you in the resource materials. We show that age-diverse teams outperform other teams. Yeah, I'll say it again, age-diverse teams outperform. Now, we know diversity gives outperformance in other cases, and our research also now applies it to age through business impact modelling and workforce analytics. We can highlight the qualities and the characteristics that add value to bottom line. Older workers bring a sense of stability to an organisation. They turn over less, and actually they reduce the turnover for their teams around them. So bringing turnover down for all age cohorts. And in short, these combined effects add dollars to the bottom line. And you'll find in that next stage research, multiple case studies quantifying the actual business savings and business benefits of taking advantage of experienced workers in your workforce. And turning back to our global talent trends research, this data shows that 77% of experienced workers are already open to this type of contingent working, akin to the contractor plus model that we highlighted earlier. The data also show that 55% of executives are concerned about losing highly experienced workers worried about them taking early retirement. They don't want to lose those skills and that experience from the business, particularly in sectors where they rely heavily on many years of experience adding value to the jobs. And engineering is just one example, banking for another. And yet 66% of companies in our research don't have any current active programs to manage workers nearing retirement. So nothing structured to manage that succession or the transfer of knowledge between these generations as they move to retirement. But these concerns can all be fixed through redesigning retirement in the flexible ways we're covering in today's session. Encouragingly, 87% of employers said that flexible working is a focus for them in 2020. Designing effective flexible working programs, however, can be a challenge. And in my experience, many companies have adopted some type of flexible working policy, but whether it's working consistently and effectively around the organisation is another matter. It's important, for example, to tackle one of the big challenges we always find, and that's around line manager trust. There's a lack of trust around people working remotely. But there's ways you can fix that through the ways you measure output and performance. It's also important in a good, effective, flexible working policy to align leadership aspirations, to align their definition of flexibility. Does it include just part-time? Does it include remote working? Or does it include job content? What is the definition of flexibility? And in our model, we look at understanding the flexibility quotient of all jobs. And through our work in this area, we know that all roles can flex. In fact, for Mercer, when we did this exercise for our own people, we adopted the slogan, #AllRolesCanFlex, which really challenged the thinking of many line managers. And it is possible to be able to flex a job on one or a number of dimensions. And we embrace 5 dimensions of flexibility. That means not just when and where people work, which are the traditional first 2 dimensions, but also how people work, what work they do, and who does the work. The second thing I'd like to look at is increasing access to remote healthcare. Now, this is a really interesting intervention and potentially a really successful one in today's climate, obviously, but as we move further into longer life working, it's becoming increasingly important to explore new avenues to deliver healthcare effectively. One positive outcome of the pandemic has been the growing prevalence of telehealth. Social distancing measures clearly already in place by nature of telehealth, and this access to digital doctors and virtual specialists is becoming commonplace. Digital health tools broaden access to vital health interventions, particularly among low-wage workers, and particularly important in times like we're facing now. Mercer data shows that only 43% of organisations currently deploy remote healthcare or telemedicine as part of their employee experience at the moment. But the good news is that it's over 2/3 of employers are looking to invest in digital health heavily in the next 5 years. So we're very encouraged by that finding. And thirdly, and on the topic of financial resilience, I want us now to think creatively about wealth management. And let's be brutally honest here. Just tweaking pensions is wholly insufficient to secure people's financial wellness based on the financial products, systems, and demographics as they stand today. Data shows employees want long-term financial planning help. So offering financial education in the workplace, access to robo-advisory services, even on a triage basis to understand where they find the right solution, and personal financial health check every 5 years over age 40. All of these are ideas that are currently in practice and currently helping. but only 45% of companies make personal financial management tools available today, even just wealth calculators. Although, encouragingly, 41% plan to invest in them in this year. But in my view, we must go significantly further. We need to reimagine retirement altogether and get really creative. For example, some of the conversations we had in the World Economic Forum sessions at Davos and the regional ones we're having this year, we're bringing even more creative solutions to the table. Can we support individuals to think intergenerationally about their assets, for example, pooling assets amongst the generations for greater returns? And that may be assets like property, or it may be pensions that pass to future generations. And in terms of the self-employed, a very underserved, underprotected, huge group of employees, of workers and economic contributors. What income smoothing products might we engage to ensure the self-employed can manage income volatility? One of the biggest struggles for the self-employed is that potential volatility. What about permanent life insurance as a solution, or longer term mortgages? And how can we make phased access to pension assets easier? In some countries, it's against the regulations to be in work and drawing pension at the same time. And so governments and companies will have to work together to make these outdated regulations and financial products and solutions more age and longevity appropriate. The goal is reaching the end of that rainbow, finding the end of the rainbow and redesigning retirement for all generations. The COVID-19 pandemic is shining a light on how organisations treat their stakeholders. They'll be remembered for how they acted to employees in this time. And that responsibility includes helping them to secure their people's financial future, regardless of age. Redesigning retirement means redesigning work too. It means creating a flexible working environment in which all generations can thrive. It means creating an environment where the young can look forward to without fear, and that the old can enjoy with dignity. In our experience, this will mean a much deeper blending and blurring of the lines between employment and self-employment, between retirement and semi-retirement. People need freedom to design their own glide path. They need access to the tools that will enable them to navigate that glide path well. And finally, I want to finish by sharing the last of the new rules of living longer. Rule number 11. It's time to dispatch regrets. It's time to dispatch myths. Life is no longer too short not to put a few things right. All those things you wished you'd done, do them now. You're never too old. It's never too late. And let's ensure that from a financial resilience perspective, at least, we don't end up with even more regrets by not taking very bold steps now to fix the entire system. If you've been intrigued by some of the thoughts and comments and solutions we're working on here, we'd be very happy to catch up with you and go through particular situations in more detail. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the Congress, and thank you very much for joining me today.